All right, and we're back. We're going to start today by looking at chapter 11.3, which discusses the ideas of nationalism and sectionalism. But today, which is Monday, we're going to focus our attention on just nationalism. So if you look up here on this slide, you can see the reading you'll have to do for this whole chapter. It is from pages 379 to 384. I'm going to turn the pointer on right here because I think it's really fun to go like this. All right, so like we do with these slides, now we're going to just kind of remind ourselves of where we left off. We're going to reset our focus. So remember from chapter 11.2, we looked at the results of the War of 1812. And one of the results of the War of 1812 was that more Americans felt optimistic or positive about the nation's future. Yay! So really what that means is they were hopeful and encouraged by things that had happened, and they thought there were a lot of bright spots and positive things that were coming for America. All good things were going to come. We also remember that the Industrial Revolution changed how people lived and worked. Remember that a lot of people had been farmers, but during this period, starting in about the 1790s, a lot of people started switching their source of work from farming to manufacture in factories. So raw materials were needed to make all kinds of manufactured goods. Then we talked about improvements in transportation and communication. We're going to look at more at transportation today. And then this is the invention we really focused on, the cotton gin. It led to the demand for way more cotton in the South, and that led to the spread of slavery. It's going to lead to a lot of other things coming up in the next few decades of our story. All right. So today your goal is to be able to define nationalism. That's a word you've probably heard before, but we're going to really zero in on the meaning today. So nationalism is a feeling of pride, loyalty, and protectiveness towards your nation. So we're going to go back into our story here. And President James Madison, the fourth president of the United States, also the smallest president we've ever had. He was only about 5'4" and 100 pounds. He wanted to make America grow and do well on its own. So we talk a little bit in the book today about what we call the American system. It was promoted by a guy named Henry Clay, who's a very famous politician from this era in American history, like the first half of the 1800s, the 19th century. Henry Clay, here's a little interesting trivia for you. I know you guys love trivia, especially where U.S. history is concerned, but Henry Clay is the only person in Congress ever to serve as the Speaker of the House in their first term as a congressman. Ooh, pretty good. So what were the components of the American system? So one was a protective tax. We're going to call it a tariff, which is a tax on goods that are imported from other countries. So this protected the nation's businesses. People bought local, which in turn led to more people having jobs in local communities in the United States. Part of the American system was also the creation of a national bank, which would mean there would be one currency or one type of money. So banks in different states would no longer be able to make their own unique money. And we're going to really focus on today improving transportation. They wanted to improve roads and other forms of transportation around the country, things like canals. They figured it would help improve the economy, allowing people to move goods. And there's a video link here that's going to talk about it. It's a couple videos in this presentation today. So we're not going to spend too much time talking about this right here, but this is a cartoonist rendering of this era and what the American system calls for. And by the way, I just want to tell you that doesn't look anything like James Madison there. That looks more like Andrew Jackson to me, but what do I know? All right. So we into this story into an era called the era of good feelings. In this era, we see the rise of nationalism, but we also see, as the name would suggest, good feelings. There is less conflict between the two dominant political parties at the time, being the Federalists and the Democrat Republicans. Everything is kind of peaceful, and there isn't too contentious, or meaning there isn't a lot of fights between the two parties. So there's a feeling of pride and loyalty towards the nation because of the American system. And transportation begins to link and connect more cities. So if you look at this map right here, you see this red line. That is what we call now the old National Road. Remember, back in those days, there weren't roads like we have now. The interstate wasn't created until the 1950s. But this original dirt road called the Old National Road stretched all the way from Cumberland, Maryland, right here, kind of by Pennsylvania, the border with Maryland and Pennsylvania, went all the way across Ohio, across Indiana, and stopped in Illinois. So I'm always really interested in these stories of how these major, gigantic projects are sometimes hundreds of miles long. How do they do those things back in the 1800s? It's really, really impressive the level of labor that goes into these public works projects. So this is what I was talking about in the last slide. And again, here you see it with the red line tracing the route of the national road. It became the country's main east to west route. It stretched from Cumberland, Maryland, like I said, to Vandalia, Illinois, which is very, very close to St. Louis. They have really good baseball right here. Team with a red bird on their hat. And then the Erie Canal. This was a water route between New York City and Buffalo, New York. It helped get farm products and other things from the western part of New York back to the east and into New York City, where they could be shipped to other states or around the world. So, if you remember, a canal is a man-made or human-constructed waterway. So you can't really see all of New York in this map, but if you remember from earlier in the year, this river that kind of runs parallel to New York's eastern border is the Hudson River. So they cut this canal, or they dug this canal out of the ground all the way across upstate New York to Buffalo, New York. So we have now linked the Great Lakes. This is Lake Erie right here. We've now linked it with this canal all the way to the Hudson River, and the Hudson River then drops down south and goes to the port of New York City. All right, so right here, these are 3 video links I'm going to have you guys watch. The first one is about 7 minutes long. This one about the National Road is about 3 minutes long, and the one on the Erie Canal is about 7 minutes long. So when you are done with this stuff, you are going to choose one of these 3 things to do to demonstrate your learning, to show what you know. You can write an acrostic poem. You can respond in a paragraph to this question. Discuss the factors that help promote national unity. And your history book on those pages that I identified in the beginning of this presentation will help you tremendously. And you can also draw a graphic organizer that shows how nationalism united the country. So here's what we're looking at for an acrostic poem. You'll write nationalism vertically, Nationalism. And with each letter, you are going to come up with a statement or a fact about nationalism. And this is your graphic organizer. You can draw this on a Google Doc and then submit it in Google Classroom. And this is your paragraph option right now. So there are 4 events that help to promote national unity during this time. To begin with, that could be your opening sentence, your intro sentence. And you're going to put supporting detail or supporting ideas, add details, and a concluding sentence. So use your best paragraph structure for that one. Right? I want to put a blank document, a blank Google Doc for this assignment into Google Classroom, and I will have you just submit it that way. As always, email me with any questions you might have. I hope you guys are all doing well. I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Be good.